Okay, we're here. This is our first podcast for Chasing Light Gallery. You got to bear with us. We're kind of new at this, and hopefully we can get more used to it and make things exciting. Today we're going to be covering a bunch of questions we get periodically, and I figured we would start from the beginning when we got started in photography and things like that. And today in this podcast, we have somebody special, and I don't know why I would let a landscape photographer in with a street photographer, but that's just how it works. We have Robin here, so say hi, Robin.
Hey, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
I'm surprised you didn't do like everybody did on what Raymond did on Everybody Loves Raymond, where he goes, howdy, because he was very nervous. We're both
y'all.
Yeah, we're both very nervous. Some of the questions we get, they're all over the board, so we put them in order to where we're going to start from the beginning. And the first question that we get asked periodically, what got you started in photography? And we'll start with Robin to find out what triggered her when she got bit by the photography bug until it became addicting. So what got you started?
And honestly, when I was growing up, I didn't know a whole lot about photography. The only thing we had was family photos. So I was familiar with the Polaroid camera my parents owned. And then my grandparents had a film camera that only came out for holidays or birthdays or, family photos where we wanted to capture memories. So I think that generation in particular is all about capturing the moment and sharing those family photos with their kids and grandkids as they're growing up. And I remember my mother had a drawer full of family photos. A lot of people I didn't even know because they went way back to great-grandparents and maybe even great-greats. But she periodically would pull these out and have stories. And we loved listening to all the stories and seeing the family photos. And it just was a time for connection and memories. And that's what photography was about at that point in my life. And then one day I was in high school, and I remember this journalist from the local paper, small town local paper, they came to our house and said, can we take a picture of your land and put it in the paper? And of course, my parents said, sure. So the next week, I looked at the paper, and I saw this photo, and it just touched me. There was a picture of the fishing pond that my dad used to take us to go fishing. And you would see the land in front of it, and then behind you would have rolling hills where our neighbor lived on top of the hill, I guess the neighbor across the pond. But anyway, it was titled Summertime.
Will we get their history too?
Maybe.
So.
But it was called Summertime Peace. And I just remember that emotion and the feeling I got when I saw that. And then there was a poem that went with it. And I think that was my first introduction to landscape photography. And it was that feeling and emotion. And then later I went to college and loved hiking, loved biking, loved seeing things because, I'm in awe of God's creation. And I had no phone, no cell phones then, so no camera. It was basically a memory, or you could draw it, or just whatever, no way to capture it. So then I saw this book, and it was called Natural Wonders. And I think you've seen the book now. I've shown it to you. I still have it after 40 years. But it was pictures of a lot of the national parks and national wonders in America. And I remember looking at all those photos, which were landscape, of course. And I don't know, I just had a connection, and I said, man, I'd love to visit places like this and take photos. But at that point, know nothing about photography. So saved up my money, and the first purchase was a camera.
Well, you got drawn to landscape and things like that. I was more of a city boy. Spent most of my life in cities, so I can find beauty there.
Right.
And the funny thing is, when me and Robin go shooting, I'm very comfortable doing street photography because I grew up around that. I'm very streetwise, and so
I'm not.
no, not even close. And so if I went to a rough area to go shoot, I'm very comfortable because I can read people quite well, and I'm very aware of my surroundings at all times. And the only time I get nervous is when I take Robin, because she likes to wear a lot of jewelry and really nice clothes, and with that expensive camera, it's like saying rob me. So, and but if we go do landscape stuff, then I get nervous because gators and snakes and things you can't reason with, and there's no witnesses like you could in the street. So it's a struggle for us, but we take turns. I'll go try landscape. I'm not very good at it, and she'll go do.
You're amazing at everything.
No, and she'll go do street photography, and she's quite good at both. She's gotten braver over the years, but I'm going to cover the same question what got me started in photography. It was completely by accident. At the time, I was a graphic designer for an internet company, and this is when it very first started. And I'm going to show my age here. There was only about 500 websites on the internet when I first got started. And I was designing web pages for this company and doing graphics and things like that. And as the internet grew, I was borrowing pictures off the internet to use for my graphics. and that became a habit. And eventually, it grew further, and more people were starting to get upset that you're borrowing their photos. And so I was constantly having to remove photos. And so I always needed photos for graphics for the internet. So I went out and bought a camera and said, well, I'll take my own pictures and use those. And it was quite the challenge for me because I had one friend that was a photographer, and I hope he ain't listening to this, but I never ever thought he was very good at all. But he knew how to talk about cameras, and I was interested. And he taught me to shoot in manual mode, 100% manual mode. I didn't know what AV, TV, or anything else was, or even auto. No clue. And so he was explaining to me about auto mode. His methods never worked very well for me. I kept getting blurry photos and things like this, and I wasn't very happy at all. And then he told me that low light photography is the hardest form of photography to photograph. If you can master low light, then anything else you shoot past that with perfect light is a breeze. It's very simple. So I practiced like crazy at home, doing nothing but low light until I mastered that. And then, sure, everything else became a breeze. But I spent countless hours just shooting odd objects with odd light sources, from candles to a flashlight to a lamp. And then I bought a styrofoam head and started using that to adjust light and see how it falls on faces if I go up high with it, things like that. And that's, once I got the camera mastered in low light, then I started studying light quite a bit, and the effect and the angles and what it does. And I just kept practicing that way. But that's how I got started in photography, is I had to, for my job as a web designer for this company. So, but
And so what was your first camera?
my first camera, it was a Canon Rebel, the very first digital Canon Rebel that came out. Tiny little silver thing, and all I had was a 50 millimeter lens at the time. And I loved that lens. It was great for low light as well. And so that was a very cheap budget. You can buy that camera for $50 today.
Right.
And I've posted photos before that I've shot with that $50 camera and that
Right.
50 millimeter lens. people can't tell a difference from my mirrorless that I have today and that.
I was just about to say that. I've seen those photos.
Yeah.
And you've gotten highly recognized for photos from budget gear.
From budget gear,
Yeah,
yes.
it's pretty amazing.
What was your first camera?
That first camera I purchased was, I think, a 1980s Pentax film camera. And I was clueless. I knew nothing about it. Had to figure out how to put the roll of film in and didn't know anything about the triangle that everybody talks about and the exposure triangle. I mean, it's been a long time ago. I just remember I had to get 100 film or 200 film if it was bright sun outside. I had to get 400 if it was overcast. I had to get 800 or more if it was at night. That's about all I knew. And I would just go out. I think it was fully manual was the only thing. So I had to kind of figure, my focus and all that out. But I remember just going out and shooting a roll of film for the day because I don't know what film I'm going to need for the next day. And I think I went to a Wolf camera store, basically with my budget, which wasn't a lot, and talked to the salesman. I got whatever he said get. And then I can remember taking that roll of film to Eckert's drugstore, which I don't think exists anymore, and would pray I got a decent photo. I think they, back then, for what I was shooting, I was thinking, oh, they're okay. But, and it didn't seem to cost much at the time because your per print was just cents. But, of course, you don't realize how much film you're buying over time. And I think I found a few out in the garage the other day that never got developed. And then I think in 2000, I've kind of played with a few cameras over the years. But in the year 2000 is when the digital, I believe, was coming out, or that's when I was first realizing it. So we bought the Canon Rebel digital, the first, probably the same one you had, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I've never experienced shooting film. To be honest, if I had to learn on film, I don't think I would have lasted because of the letting somebody else develop my photos with their vision versus mine. And the cost. As an artist, I know what I want at the end of the day. And I can't see dropping off a roll of film to Eckert's Drugs or something and come back and go, cool, they're not blurry. and that's the best results. Or I would have been 100% black and white photographer.
Yeah.
100% refused to shoot color.
But even then, you're no Ansel Adams in the beginning.
yeah. There's
the black and white looks a little different.
yeah. There's so. All right. When did photography finally become alive for you?
That's a good question. When did it come alive? I think it has multiple parts to get there, but I guess right after I bought that first Canon Digital Rebel, I was in a new town. I guess we had moved in Y2K. We moved to Texas. So I was busy exploring, learning new territory, and we got the digital camera for the first time. So it's a whole new experience. Still clueless. And as you've figured out by now, I cannot learn by reading a manual. I cannot learn by reading a book. I'm a visual, hands-on learner, and that has really kept me down for so long. But during that point, I'm doing my best. I see things, I want to capture it, so I'm kind of a point-and-shoot kind of girl. Some photos were great, I thought. Maybe you didn't. Some not so good, but anyway, now film's free.
No, when I saw your first photos that you have hanging up in your house, I thought
yes, I hung them up.
I thought she had a good eye, and I just felt like it was more on the purest. It was 100% purest.
It was.
But her eye, where she shot from, the angles she shot from, I went, wow. She could be a great photographer, But they were definitely on a purist end of the spectrum. And
yeah, I knew nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing about editing a photo.
Yeah.
So you got what you got straight out of camera. And if I thought it looked good, if somebody else thought it looked good, we blew it up. I don't even remember how many pixels we had at the time. But anyway, I still have that photo back there on the wall. I need to probably replace that at this point. But
yeah, probably with some of your newer
But it
stuff.
was a great vacation, and it was of horses, and I love animals, so it touched me. But anyway.
It touches me too.
Yeah.
I'm going, that really needs some editing.
It does. It does. I wish I actually could go back, but it was JPEG as well, so I couldn't get a lot of editing out of that. So, like I said, I knew nothing except what I visually would see I wanted to capture. So that's what I did. But it got my interest going. My kids finally got into full-time school. And I guess we moved to Texas when I became a full-time mom. I had always worked 60-plus hours. So I got a part-time job while the kids were in school at a photography studio. And the hopes of that was to learn from the photographers there. The studio I went into, I loved their photos. It was the first time it was family, of course, which it's family. But it was the first time I saw an artistic side with family photos. The manager there was very artistic. So I had the passion for it, just didn't really know a lot. Got the job, and unfortunately, I have skills in customer service, I guess, and I had passion. Those aligned with sales, because I was able to book clients, get them excited, prepare them for a shoot, and make more money. Didn't learn much about photography, unfortunately. So it did inspire me to talk about maybe getting a photo studio in my house. So we bought a new camera, which was the Canon 7D. So off to learning that. But then we moved, I think, in 2004 to St. Louis. Back to mom mode. Camera only came out special occasion, exploring, hiking. I got to get my camera back out. Then the kids started playing sports and growing. So we went and bought a 100 to 400 Canon L series lens. Still know nothing about the settings. I'm just doing the best I can. I wish I had met you a long time ago so I could understand my aperture and shutter speed and being able to grab those awesome photos of my kid playing sports. But anyway, long story short, we end up moving in 2015 to Florida. Supposed to be a fresh start, and it was, but not the one I expected. So God always has other plans, I guess. So my 30-plus year relationship ended with
That's how I make God laugh. I tell him my plans. He gets a good laugh out of that.
Well, he definitely made a turn in my life, but it's all good. We do the best we can. But anyway, so I don't know where my future's headed. 30-plus year relationship ended. And I guess after about 2 years of trying to figure this out on my own, fate would have it, I met you. I don't know what got us to start sharing the photos. You were sending me photos that you had taken in your past, and I was sending you my beautiful photo hanging on the wall. And I remember you saying, what camera do I have? And we've discovered we have the same camera, the Canon 7D. And I thought, that's odd. It's like a 20-year-old camera at this point, I think. And you're taking these amazing photos, and mine look nothing like yours, of course. You know that. But I remember you saying, I can help you with those settings. And I remember going, yes, please help me. So we, I think, had a photo outing. You're laughing at me. What?
Well, that was my pickup line to get to know you. So,
and I fell for it.
I can help you
Line
with that.
and sinker. So anyway, we had our first photography outing. And I drove over to your apartment, and you're in the Jeep waiting on me as usual. And you're like, get in. I said, where are we going? You said, I don't know. And I went, well, okay, this is interesting. And we're driving. And you're like, I don't.
Robin has to plan everything.
Well,
Even if we go out of town to do a shoot, she goes, you want to see some photos, what it's going to look like? And I'm like, no. I want to be surprised and get my own vision. Because if I got to drive there with some other photographer's photos in my head, it's like etched there. I got to get my own zone.
I know. It's the Girl Scout in me, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or the mom.
Right.
Always trying to plan. But I remember you're like, we're not chasing anything in particular. We're chasing light. That's all I'm looking for is light. And I went, okay. So we're driving along, and I remember you pulled over into a bank parking lot. And I'm like, okay, not quite what I expected. And we're walking, and there's a puddle.
But what made me pull in there? That's the point.
The light.
The light was in that parking lot through trees that were on the
Right.
far end of the parking lot.
Right. And so he sees a puddle. The light's coming down on the puddle, and there's a leaf floating. Just a little bitty leaf in this shallow little puddle on the pavement, of all things. And I'm just watching him, and he gets down on his hands and knees, and he takes a photo. And then he shows it to me, and I'm like, whoa. Really? How did you make that leaf in that small little piece of water on the pavement look like that? And I think that's what all of a sudden it just opens your eyes to what can be done with nothing.
Yeah.
And I think you get more compliments about taking an ordinary object that most people would walk by and turning it into art. And now, after working with you and being beside you so long, I'm starting to get some of those same compliments. And I'm like, oh, I must be doing something right. It's like, finally, I don't know, it's opened up a brand new world to me. And, you know, I don't know, I guess all the people listening already have figured out you have a way of seeing things, and you just bring it to life.
No, that's why I struggle with landscape, because landscape, there's so much going on, so many trees and water and this, and you can shoot a pretty picture, but I'm trying to find the story in the picture.
Right.
So to me, the story would be like an old post that's leaning, and it's got some paint left on it. It's old and splintered. I'm more interested in that post to tell the story. Now, if it was a brand new post that was freshly put in, freshly painted, there's no story there.
Right.
The imperfections in photography is the story. And when it comes to landscape, it's like, it's corner to corner, left to right, up and down. It's pretty,
And that's what you see. And what I see, it just brings, I guess, from that first photo, summertime peace. I see God's creation, and it just does something to me in my spirit, I guess. I don't know. And I'm sure it's a lot of how we were brought up. I was out on a farm. It was lots of landscape, lots of hills, lots of creatures that you're scared of, lots of cows. And so, yeah, we view things differently sometimes. But another thing with you is how you, I'm trying to figure out how to put this into words, but I don't know how I'm trying to say this, but anyway, thanks to you letting me understand the delicate interplay with light and shadow, and how that does bring a story, and it brings emotion. And I think that's what makes others connect. And it could be one person, it could be thousands. But when someone sees your photo and they have a connection with that, no matter if it's a homeless person, somebody on their cell phone, somebody just touching hands or holding hands, or if it's a big landscape for me, it's all about connection. And I think experience from people, how they grew up. A lot of people that are grown up in the city are going to connect more with your street photography, I think, where people in the country and mountains and hills and valleys and woods, we have to find the little things.
I think street photography is appreciated by a lot more people than just street photographers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's people that love to go to a mall and people watch.
Right.
Because they can feel their personalities and
Right.
things like that. And as a street photographer, I understand that feeling of sitting in a mall and people watching.
Oh, yeah.
And however, I want to capture it because every face tells a story.
Right.
And you can almost tell a person's personality by the way they carry their face expressions and things like that.
Right.
And you were talking about shadow and light. And the reason, this is another reason why I have a hard time with landscape, because it's lit from corner to corner, up and down, left and right. Everything's lit. And to me, shadow is just as important as light is.
Right.
And the reason being, and this is what I live by, if I pick an object and what is lit that you can see,
Mm-hmm.
that's my story I'm telling you.
Right.
But in the shadows, the stuff they can't see,
Right.
that's where they get to create their own story
Right.
of like where this might be. And wow, why does it pull me in? Why
Right.
is it this? And what's going on over here? And how would you find something so simple? And all of a sudden, they're engaged in the photo.
Right. Creating
But
their own story.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I tell the whole story for them from corner to corner,
Mm-hmm.
it's
no imagination.
people don't remember a pretty photo,
Mm-hmm.
but they remember a photo that triggers them.
Yeah,
triggers
spoke to them.
an emotion. And so that's why everything I do, I'd rather crush the blacks on somebody's jacket,
Right.
and so it'll push it to their face to capture that face expression, versus I know the camera picked up every single thread in that jacket,
Right.
but I'm taking away the viewer's story by showing every detail from corner to corner.
Right.
And to me, it might be a perfectly shot photo, perfectly colored, but the story, you've told the whole story.
Right.
Try not to tell the whole story. Let the
Right.
viewer participate. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's when photography came alive for you, is meeting me.
And there you go. And you
I
know
was-
the rest of the story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So what brought it to life for you?
I'm going to take a brief pause here, so if you'd like to support this channel, check this out. Want to take your photography to the next level? From mastering your camera settings to stunning shots, I've got you covered. Join me as I break down pro techniques step by step. Start creating like a pro today. Check out the link below. Chasing Light Gallery. There was a couple things. Like I said, when I started photography, it was just to get my own graphics so I could do my job at work. You know, it was mainly that. And but the more I practiced at home with low light and doing lighting with drastic shadows and experimenting, I used to practice with my son too.
Oh, right.
And he was a good little actor and poser for me and things like that. However, it got to a point that, because I practiced so much with him, it got to a point, if he heard me pick up my camera, he'd run.
I don't blame you. I don't like being in front of the camera.
And, you know, he's probably going on a year of me posing him and making him sit there for me and do this, do that, as I move lights and things like that. But he could be in the middle of a cartoon, laying on the couch, hear me pick up that camera, and all of a sudden he disappears. He's gone.
But I have seen some of those photos, and he was a good little actor. You brought out a lot of emotion in every photo you took of him.
He can definitely act. That's for sure. I mean, I would tell him.
He's got a great kid, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I would tell him, act paranoid, and he could do it. And, you know, and he's little. I mean, I forget how old, but anyway. So when I started seeing the shadow and lights really get very dynamic for me, I was like, wow, what would happen if I do this? Then I started experimenting with multiple lights and stuff in the house, and I could sculpt with lights. I could sculpt with flashlights. Matter of fact, there was one time we were out because I was trying to teach her light and balance, and this is still, we're just She's just learning from me. Nothing's going on. And one of the lessons I taught her, I took her out at night to another parking lot, and I used a flashlight and showed her how to paint with light.
Oh, yeah.
On the camera, and just really, I pushed more about lighting and shadowing than anything.
Right.
Because that's what makes or breaks a photo. Objects, I to this day, I can't get myself to go look for an object to photograph. I mean, I had one time a buddy of mine, Igor, which you know Igor.
Love Igor.
Yeah.
Hey, Igor.
Yeah.
Hope you're watching. Listen.
He used to be my old light guy when I used to shoot in Arizona and out in LA. And he called me up home one time. He goes, "You got to get down there. You got to photograph down here. You got to photograph this thing." I said, "What is?" He goes, "I'm not going to tell you. You got to come see it. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful." And so I drove probably 30 minutes to get to him, and I find him, and he goes, "Come over here. Look at this." And he shows me this beautiful Lamborghini. He goes, "Grab some pictures of that." And I said, "No." He goes, "Why not?" I said, "Dude, you're a light guy. This thing's sitting in the shade. There's nothing, dynamics, highlights, nothing." He goes, "But it's a beautiful car." I said, "You should have just took a picture of your cell phone and sent it to me." But luckily, I ended up walking around while I'm there and finding cool lit areas with equal shadow. But I never did take a picture of that car. You know,
Poor Igor.
It's like, you know, and so, but to me, that's when photography came alive for me as an art form. And there was no stopping me then, because I can look at a cobweb in a corner under a chair.
Right.
Not that we ever have that here with Robin around. I mean, that's never going to happen, you know. So I say.
I was going to say, I'm not touching that one.
Yeah. But I can, just a cobweb in a corner under a chair. I'll see them in like hotels and things like that. The sun's just hitting it just right. And it's like, gosh, that's a whole story, just that chair leg and that cobweb. There's just such an emotion there versus if I shot the whole chair.
Right.
You know, they're going to see
Itsy bitsy spider.
Yeah, they're going to see like a little bit of trim from the chair leg, and then this cobweb stuck to it.
Right.
Let them imagine the rest of the story is
Right.
where I'm at. So,
Yeah, and I know, like when you were trying to teach me everything, you were so open and accepting of where I was. And I think that's why people can relate to you so much now in this photography group and learning from you. But you let me experience almost every type of photography. I mean, I'm sure there's some we haven't, but you were open to, okay, we're going to try this, we're going to try that. And you literally would take me around the house when the sun's coming down and go, look over there at that light. And then you would teach me how to sculpt as well with the little light, which you've done, I think, a video tutorial on that. But it's not like you had to have special lights. You would we went and got a $20 Home Depot light just to experiment one time. We were like, this is how I started. And you showed me how you started sculpting. But just that, I think, experience and trying different things. A lot of people, I know they're like me, trying to figure out, oh, I don't know my style. What type of photography do I need to do? How do I edit? You got so many questions. And the way you explain things, and you're not afraid to let me try these things to try to see if I can find my own style, my own passion. And I appreciate that, because I know that takes a lot of time and a whole lot of patience, especially with me, because I don't overthink anything. We probably have more disagreements about my overthinking than anything else in life. But, I want to be my best, and I hate being the rookie, and I hate not knowing things, and I hate not having the answers to all the questions. But I know even with you didn't have them all to begin with. It took time, it took practice, it took experience, it took failure.
What I was trying to do, and to me, the worst thing I could have ever done was instantly turn you into nothing but a street photographer. Mm-hmm. We're going here, we're going there, we're going here, going there, and it not be your passion. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what your passion really is till we
Right.
try every form. Now, I've been down every form, and I did it over the years. I wanted to speed that process up for you, to find what you really don't love what I do because you have a photography partner you can go shoot with and things like that. You still have to be in love with you and your own work.
Right.
And so that's why I took you down a path. All right, we're going to shoot product.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to shoot still life.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to shoot night photography. Now we're going to shoot models and portraits, and we're going to use studio flashes. And I took you down this one genre after another and taught you each one.
Right.
And there was only a couple that really grabbed you and got you fired up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did put landscape last on the list, mainly because I'm not a landscape photographer. I can just tell you your camera settings.
Right.
You know, what to look for. I was never very good with landscape stuff, you know. And so, but what I found that lit her up is when I had the Chippendales come pose.
Did I sleep through that?
Yeah, that never happened. No, when she did still life of her mom's keepsakes, she really came alive with that. And then, of course, she mentioned a bunch of times, and I let it go in one ear and out the other, landscape. And I'm
Thanks.
like, yeah, well, cool. We're going to go up over here. Why don't we try this now? You know, and I tried to avoid it because I just didn't have the knowledge to help mold her in that area, was all. But we ended up doing landscape, and she naturally does beautiful landscape work. And now I'm saying, teach me. So,
Well, that's too kind, but thank you.
so what was the next question? What is your biggest accomplishment that made you feel like photography actually had value?
Well, again, I have to thank you for helping me to understand my settings and learning how the interplay of the light and shadow can be used to enhance a mood to a photograph or bring out an emotion. Now I feel like my photos can visually tell a story. Not just mine, but others now can use, like you were talking about your shadows. It helps them use their own imagination as well. So I think that has really helped my photography grow a lot. I've just learned so much from you. And also, like, there was one day, I think it's a lady in the Florida photography group, maybe, a few years ago when I first joined that group, I posted a few photos, and I think the photo I posted that I got her first comment on was a man in a fishing boat. It wasn't even that great of a photo, but she commented, "I can see your heart." And that touched me. And it made me, that photo to me reminded me of my dad fishing. And you know a lot about my dad and the stories I've told you and how fishing basically saved his life from some hard times in his life. I really do think that's what brought him through a lot of bad situations. So that photo did remind me of that. But when she told me she could see my heart, it made me wake up and be aware that I think there's a saying out there even that whatever you photograph the most is because you have a passion for it or your heart's there. So anyway, that brought it out to me that I need to be more intentional with my photographs. And so now, I don't know if I told you this or not, but every time we're out searching for a place to go shoot, I'm always praying that God will take me to the right place and show me moments and bring me awareness to something in my surroundings that I can capture. You're great at seeing emotion and knowing the exact moment to click this photo, you know, when you see that emotion in somebody's face. That takes a bit of practice, I think. But with me, I'm just always praying, let me see the moments that need to be captured and need to be shared with others. Again, it's all about connection, I think, and that's what photography is about. And so anyway, that really inspired me. And then the other part is, I guess, the day you took me to the art gallery. And I'm nervous as can be because I lack a little bit of confidence, as you know.
A little bit?
Just a little bit.
Unnecessarily. If I have a complaint about Robin is she can take a half hour to park a vehicle. It's got to be exactly 5 inches on this side, 5 inches on that side. That's it.
Sorry, I'm very conscientious about others.
That's it. Usually I'm like, let me out, let me go shoot. You figure out how you want your car parked, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember going there, and I don't have a lot of confidence in myself or the photos, but I follow Rob's league. I usually trust him, and he knows what he's talking about. And by the way, you're very brave to be able to share those photos. I don't think I would have ever done that without you. But when someone at an art gallery agrees to sell your photos in their art gallery, well, you know, that it made me, I guess, all of a sudden go, okay, well, maybe I'm doing something right.
And the part she's leaving out, we had planned to, well, I had planned to take her to multiple art galleries that day to show her work. And of course, I was showing mine too. And she was like unsure because she lacks confidence in a lot of areas. Like I said, unnecessarily. She does things brilliantly. And that was the first gallery we walked into. And right away they were like, yes. You know, they just fell in love with her work. Now, me personally, I've been in galleries in Arizona, all the way up to the Goldstein Gallery in Sedona. My work's been in. And I enjoy it. It's a compliment and all, but it's not my end goal, to just be known in all the art galleries. But I know it was a huge ego boost for me. And so the only reason I decided to go back to try to, get Robin's stuff in gallery was to boost her ego, because she lacks confidence, to actually show her how good she is. Because galleries aren't stupid. They know their clients. They know what'll sell to keep the doors open. And they're not going to take on something they don't feel they can move to pay the bills. And there was no hesitation. They loved her work. And what was funny, which was a little bit, knocked my ego down, I went in to boost her ego and it knocked mine down. The art gallery owner literally said, yeah, she's got a bit of an edge on you. She's actually better at this than you are. And it's landscape stuff and odds and ends.
Till they saw us black and white.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm like, great. Came here to boost her ego and get her confidence going so she can start grasping what she loves. And they look at me and say, yeah, she's better than you, But what did we present them with? Landscape and I think a lot of boats. Yeah. Stuff that in Lighthouse, I think, and a few things, but it wasn't your heart. No, it's out of my norm. It's in another area.
Yeah. So it gets back to that what Linda told me. I can see your heart in your photos, and she follows us now, and she sends me stuff from here to there about different springs or different areas to go photograph. But she still will tell me at times, I see your heart, and I know exactly what she means, and it keeps boosting me. And I have to say, I thank you for, the gallery and your bravery to share that, and for teaching me everything. But I can't let it slide that the people listening to this podcast, the people in our groups, the Facebook friends, other friends that we know, when they stop and take the time to like a photo that you posted, or to make a comment, or to send you questions or messages, or to buy a print. All of that, I'm just so thankful and grateful for. So I can't let that slide, because again, me, I don't accept compliments very well. I don't know how to react, because I just don't. I don't see that in myself.
You say thank you.
I know
And take ownership
you're
of
teaching
it.
me, and I'm learning.
Yeah, you take ownership of the
And
compliment.
I'm learning.
You deserve it. you know.
But so when you do, get messages and people take the time to comment, I don't take that lightly. And I really just, while we're on here, I just want to say thank you to each and everybody that literally takes a moment to stop, look at our photos, and make a comment, because that actually helps inspire me as well. It just makes me feel like, there's something here. Because I know when I first met you, I never thought of myself as having any gifts. And I struggled a lot in my life wanting to know, well, I don't know what my gift is. I don't know what my purpose is. What am I going to do? What's meaningful? And I remember when I met you and was talking about all your talent, which blows me away at how much you can do and all the knowledge that you have. But you said, you have other gifts. And I'm like, yeah, right. Name one. And you started naming off gifts that I never thought of as a gift. I mean, I'm really good at laundry.
That's a gift to me.
I can fold clothes like no other. But I've been doing it since I was a little girl for a family of 7 at the time. But you started, telling me gifts that I never thought of was gifts. And, I thank you for that, because that helped me think, oh, well, just because mine aren't extraordinary and
But they are,
or they're not maybe talked about or you get recognized for, God gives us all gifts for different reasons. And when you sat and talked to me about that, it started making me think, oh, well, I've got a plan for me,
right.
And so, but anyway, you're always trying to point out my talents and my gifts and help me.
Well, I think people need to hug what they're passionate about. Like I've always told Michael, the hardest thing to do in life is to stick with what you love versus what people think you should love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your true talents will come out.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we're together 24/7, I'm a street photographer, it'd be foolish of me to try to turn you into having a passion for street photography.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that you get some landscape time so you can grasp your passion.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can't expect you to, because if you look at my photos, they can be dark and moody,
Mm-hmm.
much like inner city and the streets and stuff I grew up around,
Mm-hmm.
And you grew up, I saw where you grew up, and I got a little nervous, being up there because, I've seen movies, backwoods movies and things that make me a little bit nervous, but I'm not nervous in a downtown city whatsoever, so there's certain things that it'll be hard for me to get a passion for. Now, maybe when I turn 80, which that's next year, ain't it?
Not quite.
Not quite. I'll start to appreciate a rocking chair staring out at the woods and birds flying by,
Think about all that peace.
to me, if I see a bird fly over, the only thing I think of is don't poop on me. Excuse me.
So what is your biggest accomplishment? What?
My biggest accomplishment would be
Yeah.
my next shoot. You get better every time.
Yeah.
What made me realize my photography had value was, like I said, I got into photography because I had to shoot a bunch of product stuff to do web design
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And that paid the bills,
Motivation.
But then I started exploring, like I said before, black and white and things like that, and low light photography. When I started exploring, then being an artist naturally, because I can paint and draw, I wanted to see what I could do in editing to make pieces of art out of my work. And the internet was growing. There was actually becoming more and more websites. There was, I think, 4 out there that were designated artists that could post their work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I posted my first few edited photos that I've ever done. And I got kind of knocked around a little bit by the purist,
Oh, yeah.
and I think everybody's familiar with trying to post something and then the know-it-alls that have no portfolios come tell you how horrible your stuff is. So that kind of got me a little bit. So I decided to just edit for myself because, it doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. When somebody comes and brutalizes you,
Right.
it stings.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter who it is.
Right.
And makes you second guess everything you're doing. And so I got to a point, I'm just going to edit for myself, and I call it editing for the trash can.
Right.
Because if you're shooting photos and afraid to show them to people, to me it's like an orchestra with no sound.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was editing for the trash can, and therefore I'm 100% concentrating on my passion, what I want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, back in my head, I'm going, these people aren't going to like this stuff, so I'm not going to post it. They're not going to like it, but I do. And I learned to be true to me first. And then I decided, after months of doing this, I wanted to just print some out for the house that I liked. And that means just anybody that comes over are the only ones that are going to see them. And if they say, well, that looks stupid, then I'll show them where their car is, and so went and took them to a printer, and the printer happened to be inside of an art gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only printer in town. It was inside of an art gallery, and I showed them what I wanted to get printed. And the art gallery owner was blown away by my work and begged me to be in the gallery.
Wow.
And I was like, that's what I said. I was like, well, I didn't expect that, And so then I started realizing it has value. And then when they start selling in the gallery, I go, it's just not the art gallery's owner's opinion. Obviously, other people are purchasing them as well. Matter of fact, living here, a piece I sold 15 years ago, they contacted me online. They saw me online and said, are you the Rob Jamason that shot a photo of the guy on a toilet playing an acoustic guitar? and I said, yeah, that's me. And they had bought them to put in the bathrooms of their hotels, in their hotel. And they said, they're the best conversation pieces we have in the whole hotel.
I'm sure.
And I mean, you couldn't see nothing. It wasn't
Right.
nothing perversion or anything. It was just the setting of that bathroom was very old, ancient wallpaper, completely outdated, and the acoustic guitar, it just said, this is where Robin used to live, up in Georgia. This is before I knew you.
was thinking practice time.
Yeah, and but then I started realizing there was a lot of value there, and I was making money from selling prints, and then word traveled, and then I was invited directly from that gallery to the Goldstein Gallery in Sedona, and they never let photographers in, ever.
Is this where they changed your name?
Oh, yeah. Instead of saying Robert Jamason, they say, we're going to say Robert Jamason. I said, no, we're not. I'm not about being fake. We're going to leave it that way. So I was in Goldstein Gallery for a month. Typically, galleries, they'll do a showing for a month. Mm-hmm. And if you're a hot seller, they'll give you another month,
Gotcha.
But Goldstein Gallery is so huge. They have an upstairs and a downstairs, and it's probably the most well-known gallery in Sedona, Arizona.
It's pretty impressive.
So that's...
And this was with your Rebel
I was
camera?
shooting with the Canon Rebel at the time. I still hadn't got the 7D yet.
That's amazing.
And then I ended up on the cover of a magazine. I forget, what was it, Pop Art or something, in Arizona, with my work on the cover and a whole 2 or 3 page article on up and coming photographer type thing. And from that, I ended up out in LA shooting on a movie set and got to shoot Steve Vai.
Right.
And it just grew. It just grew from there. And I've never looked back. You know, do I still want to chase galleries? No. Do I want to put Robin in galleries? I think it's a good thing to build her confidence, let her start realizing what people really see versus what she tells herself, you know. So, but anyway, it's been good talking, and we're going to try and wrap this thing up. We're going to try to do podcasts once a week, and I've already got a guest speaker lined up for next week's podcast. This guy will be interesting. He does street photography. And he'll shoot landscape stuff too, but him and Robin are a lot alike, as a matter of fact, come to think about it.
We've discovered we're both Virgos. We're going to leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. So
neither one of us can park.
Yeah, they both park the same way. But anyway, so I get irritated in stereo when I'm with them. No, it doesn't irritate me. I just go, I'm going to go shoot while you figure it out. That's it. So anyway, we'll be probably doing a podcast with him next week, but we're going to try and do this each week. We're going to talk about adventures that we go on. Like if we do a photo shoot at, let's say, the Civil War event, we'll explain to our experience, what our camera settings were, you know, what the challenges were that we had to overcome in these situations. And we'll cover details like that after each shoot we do. And that way you can get a better picture of just looking at a photo and going, wow, you know, we can give you the inside detail. So
the goods and the bads.
The what?
The goods and the bads.
The goods, the bads, and the uglies.
Yeah, and the uglies.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for listening, and check out this. I know it's a cheesy ad, but it helps keep the channel going. So check it out. And everybody, thank Lainey for all her hard work getting these videos out.
Yeah, she's been amazing.
She does amazing work, and you know, she makes a lot of graphics and stuff for me because we do stay very busy shooting and making classes and things like that. All right, see you next week.
Ciao.
Bye. Want to make your photography pop in just one click? Elevate your photos with our exclusive Lightroom presets, designed for photographers at all levels. Get professional results. Check out the link below. Chasing Light Gallery.